when things don't go your way or things fall through or things don't necessarily fall into place like you think they should, know that they're still going to fall into place in another way.
Yeah.
Like, just because it happens differently to what you were hoping doesn't mean that it's bad.
Welcome to Breaking the Binary, brought to you by women and gender diverse people in tech. We're your hosts, Art and Jarrett.
And Sarah Fraser.
Today we're really excited to get to know Ellen Bennett. First off, we'd like to acknowledge the Awabakal and Worimi people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where we're recording today, and to all First Nations Australians on whose traditional lands you're listening from. Of course, thank you to our sponsors who make our meetup and podcast possible, including Newy Tech People,
Yay!
the Port of Newcastle,
Great people.
MGA Thermal,
The best clean tech I know.
and Fraz Tech.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
Hi, Ellen. It's so great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to get to know you a bit more by knowing what you're hyper-focusing on at the moment. Like, if you don't hyper-focus, what are you just really into?
I would say I've been making this salad lately. I've named it the sushi salad. And it's got everything that you could possibly want in a sushi roll, but in a bowl, and like nori and sesame seeds and like all the good stuff, tuna. And I just inhale it and it helps me get all of my veggies.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
That's really smart, rather than having to go through the process of rolling it when you're just going to turn it to bits anyway.
Exactly.
You know?
It's
Yeah.
like pre-mushed.
You have a bit of everything in every bite.
So that's my hyperfixation at the moment.
What are you hyper-fixating on, Sarah?
I actually recently bought a loom, and I'm looming a piece of fabric. The loom
love
isn't very
that.
big, and the piece of fabric that I'm making is not going to be very big as a result. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. But if I ever get transported back into the 1600s, I'm set. You know, I'll have a job waiting for me being a loom lady.
Mhm.
I'm assuming that's what they would call.
I feel like you just keep going more and more into these crafts, and next you'll be like spinning the
It'll be felting.
wool to like make the looming fabric.
Yeah, well, I have looked into like doing your own
Then you'll
felting.
be-
Shockingly easy to do your own felting.
Oh, that's nice.
Don't let me get into spinning my own wool, because I don't.
You're like, we just step back each time and then you'll be shearing your own sheep.
Yeah, I'm just interested more in the process than I am really in making anything as well. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, great, I know how to loom. Now I have half a finished
What
bit
do
of
I do
thing, and I'm
now?
like, well, I'm
Yeah.
just going to sit at my house.
Just like the learning process.
Yeah.
And the actual finished product.
That's good. That's
Yes.
helpful.
I am loving pink at the moment. And
You can't
have
tell.
both definitely noticed if you're watching on camera, pink everything. Yes.
Doesn't translate well to a podcast format,
No.
but believe us, we're
No. Well,
there's a lot of
that-
pink involved.
That nail kit I bought online, I mentioned it a few podcasts ago. And so
Mm.
like I've done my own pink nails. And now I
Ooh.
can't imagine having them any other colour. And now I just want, very Barbie pink.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's timely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll blame the Barbie movie that's coming out. So Ellen, this isn't your first time on a podcast. You actually host the Digitally Diverse podcast for Newy Tech People. How long have you been doing that?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I think it was October 2022 that I fully started. Do you want me to tell you a bit what it's about? Or
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
cool.
go ahead.
So yeah, it's like it kind of came about. I was talking to designers. I'm a design recruiter. And I would talk to lots of like juniors and midweights, and they were really scared about making the wrong career decision, and they didn't know what to do, and there was a lot of like paralysis by fear and a bit of imposter syndrome as well. So it's my job to talk to design leaders who know their shit, and I'm like, you know what? They've got a lot of value to add. Why don't I like record conversations with these people to help out the newbies? And yeah, it's kind of just like snowballed from there. It's been really fun.
I love
Awesome.
it. Podcasts are such a good opportunity to talk to people that you wouldn't usually talk to. And yeah, I guess record and share that wisdom and conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been really good. Like, obviously, I have phone calls and stuff with people all the time, but actually sitting down with someone for like a solid half an hour, 45 minutes to actually talk to people properly about their journey has been really, really fun and engaging, and I've learnt heaps as well. And I'm just really nosy, so I really enjoyed that as well.
Perfect person for a podcast host.
Half an hour is very optimistic for how long this is going to go.
Great. I'll get comfy then.
So we do have some rapid fire questions. What are your pronouns?
She, her.
What's a random fact about yourself?
I play the flute.
Oh.
Ooh. Something you're proud of.
My dress that I made.
Yay! That you're wearing at the moment.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
looks
Yes.
amazing.
Again, not a great piece of content for the podcast
Yes.
listeners, but it's a nice dress.
Just take my word for it. It's very nice.
What do you do on your days off?
Well, I sew. I love sewing. I'm currently trying to buy a house. And that usually
fun.
takes up a lot of my weekend, which is so great. And I'm an avid netballer and hiker and yogi. So I like being outside and doing active stuff.
Yeah,
Nice.
lovely. So could you give us a bit of your LinkedIn bio, like a bit of an overview? Tell us about you and what you do.
Well, as I said before, I work for New Tech People. So represent. Yeah, we recruit across tech, and I kind of started my design tech journey back in London. When was it? 2016. I was there, and I did design at uni. I loved it, but in Newcastle, especially back in like when I graduated, which was 2013. There just wasn't really that big of a scene here for design. So I'd always wanted to do the gap year, all that jazz. So I went and traveled. I did my gap year. And yeah, it was kind of like landed in London and it's like, okay, I know I want to work in design in some capacity, but I also want something that's flexible. Where can I find a job? Really, I'm broke. I need to find a job. So I kind of just fell into it that way. Like in the UK, recruitment is a lot bigger of an industry than what it is in Australia. So yeah, it was just really fun. Got to talk to designers who were working at like Google and Facebook, now Meta, and like all these really, really cutting edge startups working on this. Yeah, I just loved being in that scene when there's so much cool shit going on. And yeah, after that, I moved to Canada for a little bit. Went out of design and recruitment. Was a bit of a ski bum for a couple of years. Got caught there during COVID.
A classic.
Finally, exactly. Finally came home in April of last year and have been back in Newcastle since then. I've been really enjoying getting back to, the design and the tech scene in Newcastle has changed so much in the time that I was away. It was actually really, really exciting to come back and actually go to meetups and talk to people who they themselves are actually coming back. And yeah, I've been loving it.
Yeah, awesome. So why Nui Tech People?
Dun, dun, dun.
That's a good answer.
No. I the people.
Yeah.
It's in the name. It's like it's such a good crew of people. Like I love everyone that I work with. Everyone, look at Sarah turn beet red. But it was just like a good vibe. Like you know how when you you get to a workplace and you're like, okay, I like these guys. Like it's just good eggs. So and I feel like there's not too many people who specifically work in the design recruitment space, especially in Newcastle. And the feedback that I've gotten since being here has been really exciting. Everyone's really stoked that there's someone who just focuses on design and advocates for good design and actually, can speak from experience in the industry as well, which is really great. So I'm getting a lot out of being with New Tech People, and I hope that everyone else is getting a lot of me being here too.
I can't speak for everyone else, but we are.
Okay,
good. So there has been a lot of talk about this, like, I don't know, incoming peril almost in the economic downturn or at least some economic uncertainty. And I know I've done a lot of looking into the data of this, but what are your thoughts on it? How do you think it's going to affect the design space maybe in like the next 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a loaded question, and boy, oh boy, I wish I had a crystal ball because, I don't know I can't really say with any certainty. I don't think anyone can.
Mm.
But what I kind of feel like when I was in London and it was like this big pandemic boom and everyone, there was jobs left, right, and center, and everyone was getting really, really great money and it was really exciting. Now I feel like it's just kind of snapping back to reality a
Yeah.
little bit here. And even in Australia, it wasn't to that extent as what it was overseas. So I feel like we're getting less of a snapback. But definitely the international or global design scene, I feel like we've seen the worst of it and it's going to settle down now. Um, but for Australia, I feel like it's getting there. But I feel like a lot of people need to understand that there's so much value that good design and good research can have on a product and a platform, and it's not tech; it's its own separate entity.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it's only going to continue to grow.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
teaching designers and people in that space to learn to communicate their value really effectively as well.
Yes, that's like such a huge part of the job is that connection and that
Mm.
selling yourself piece, having those soft skills that, they might not tell you at General Assembly or at uni, how to sell yourself and your ideas. And some of the best designers that I know are people who can really effectively get that point across. So yeah, get on that.
Yeah, that's really good because that was gonna be one of my next questions really. That's what makes a great candidate or a great designer. So you're really leaning into the soft skills.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
mean, you can learn so much stuff on YouTube now
Mm.
and go do boot camps, and it's one of those, and I guess any tech role really, if you go to uni for it, the majority of the stuff in your first year is kind of irrelevant by the time you
Mm.
graduate.
Yeah.
Because it's just moving so fast.
Yeah.
There's new things coming out, new things to know, things are changing. So a lot of the time, if you just keep up your skills online or on YouTube and then work day to day to finesse those soft skills like, collaboration, asking the right questions, really getting to the nitty gritty of what this project that you're working on is about. And then being able to communicate that to
Mm.
other people as well. It's all well and good to have, you can do this on Figma and you can do this and this and this and have this beautiful interface. But then if you can't tell someone how you got there, then how did you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot about that, like,
Yeah.
communication and communicating how you're doing things.
How do you assess whether or not a candidate has these soft skills?
Just chat with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like you can see a really great portfolio, but if someone can't talk about their work,
Mm.
it's a bit of a red flag for me.
Yeah. So you're
And
asking those questions like, how did you get this?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's a huge part of the conversations I have. I will say, hand on heart, when I first started to recruit in design back in London, it was half the time I wouldn't even look at a CV.
Mm.
I would just look at people's portfolio because, if you can anyone can put a CV together, but
Anyone
if
can
you
lie on a piece of paper.
exactly. But a portfolio is like
Yeah.
there and it's got your name on it,
Yeah.
and it's like that's your work. Like
There's
you've
so
got
much,
to,
there's so much bias in a CV as well. Like, does it actually matter where you went to university when it's like that isn't
Mm.
relevant to whether or not you can do the job, especially in this space?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like if you're a problem solver, great. Show me how.
Show me a
What have
problem.
you
How?
solved for me lately?
Show me on the project that you've done how you problem solved. Like what problems did you solve? Tell me about it. Like
Yeah.
yeah. So I feel like portfolio is definitely so important. And yeah, just being able to chat through things.
Oh, amazing. Have you noticed the representation, like differences between women and gender diverse people and, say, men in tech when you're in this recruiting space?
I love this topic.
That's
Oh,
good.
no.
That's what we're about.
So it's actually something that I talk about on my podcast quite a bit is like just having that representation there is so important.
Mm.
Like it really does have a huge impact on the younger designers that are coming through. When I first started the podcast, I did a bit of a deep dive actually on like what are the ratios between on LinkedIn? They only have the option of looking at male and female. So graduating at the moment into design, it's pretty 50-50, which is great. Actually, I think it was like 51% female, 49% male, which is great. I love that. But then if you go into more management roles, it then skews a lot more to males. I think, oh gosh, don't quote me on it, but I think it was like 70% men, 30% women. And it was really, really confronting knowing that, like, okay, well, they're obviously getting like smart people into like out of uni and into these jobs. What's happening in the job market that is disenfranchising these females into not going for these leadership positions?
Or at least not getting it, like the inverted pyramid,
Exactly.
as they like to call it, is so common across a lot of women-dominated industries. It's so devastating. And it is, I guess, like having children, having to take career breaks, and then a bunch of those biases that people don't even realize that they have just built into how well they see women in the workplace as leaders, which is,
And I think it is changing now.
Yep.
Like when I do speak with women who are in leadership positions, they, without fail, usually always say, I knew I could do it because I was kind of like pulled up by another female leader.
Yeah.
I was like, just grabbed me like, you can do it. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And to hear, that, and everyone always remembers them by name. Like you can do so much good work by pulling up someone who may not have seen themselves in a leadership role.
Yep.
But you can have so much impact on that. And hearing these stories, it gives me a bit of hope. And it's on the up.
Yeah. I read about a very similar, like making sure you're pulling people up in the Australian Financial Review. And it was more centered around any types of leaders, not necessarily women leaders, but making sure that you're pulling women up specifically.
Yes.
But then there was the last point in the article was talking about to allow women to be involved in sports conversations. And it was a really strange way of putting it because it was saying, instead of being like, oh, well, they're talking about sports, I'm not interested. And they're saying, make sure you include women because at the end of that conversation, some, usually fairly important business chat happens once they've had the banter. But instead of saying, let's have conversations that can include everyone that aren't necessarily about sport, they're saying, oh, just make sure women are there sitting through your sports chat. It was a really interesting perspective that, the first part of the article really got the assess your own biases and making sure you're pulling up perfectly capable women as you go. And then the other part was a bit like, oh yeah, just like indoctrinate them into the structure and society that we have rather than making something more equitable across the board.
Yeah. Small changes, right?
Yeah. It's also the interesting, like pulling them up because there is a lot of chatter about how women are over mentored but under-sponsored. So people will give you lots of advice and they'll say, here's how you succeed, here's how I did it. But when it actually comes to like brass tacks, putting them forward for a promotion or helping them get to those upper echelons of management, there's a lack of support there. But there's a lot of support in the more, I don't know, mentorship is still really important, but it's not as directly impactful to how far a lot of women have to go in the workplace.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's definitely more hands-on to be like, you can do this and I'm putting you forward for this.
Yeah. Like giving them a props for a promotion or whatever it is. So there's a lot we can do in advocating for women. But speaking directly about you, what are some of the challenges that you've faced in your career?
I guess a lot of the challenges I find are probably from the outside what people would say would be like self-inflicted. I have moved around a lot. I chose something to do in uni that I was very passionate about, but also knew going into it that the career prospects were very tight and competitive. But also in saying that, I go, I sound really like a millennial, but I go a lot by vibes. So I'm quite picky where I go, and I want it to be like something that's like really values led as well. Like I'm incredibly focused on, what can I be doing, like what work can I be doing to benefit people. which in recruitment sometimes doesn't line up. So I would I think when I first went to London, I was like, okay, I'm like this 20-something-year-old in the big city. Like, I'm going to make my life here. And like, so much optimism. And then got pulled down to reality quite quickly. And then I was broke and couldn't afford new shoes to go for interviews. And like, it's all like very glamorous when you think about it. But at the same time, it was not. And I think just kind of like being able to pull myself up by the bootstraps, like, hey, you made the decision to come here. You've got to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
I think was a challenge at the time. There was multiple times where I'm like, what the heck have I done? I want to go home, but I can't because I can't afford a flight. So I just stuck it out, and like you just gotta. I think my challenges were that I just had to form a lot of resilience. And that now looking back over the last, 10 years or so, I've spent most of my 20s outside of Australia. I've come back. That has presented its own challenges. Um, so, yeah, I feel like it's definitely something that I wouldn't change, but I've definitely learned a lot from it.
What are some of your resilience tips for someone looking to develop that skill set?
I would say patience. Easier said than done. I feel like that's something that I really struggled with when I first moved overseas. I thought everything's going to fall into place immediately and I'm not going to struggle at all.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So, yeah, I just think patience, take a big breath. And when things don't go your way or things fall through or things don't necessarily fall into place like you think they should, know that they're still going to fall into place in another way.
Yeah.
Like, just because it happens differently to what you were hoping doesn't mean that it's bad. And also, if something happens within like a social setting or like in at work, know that 99% of the time it's nothing personal.
Yeah.
Just be like, okay, that's got nothing to what other people's opinions of me are none of my business. Just gotta let it go.
It's mostly about them 99% of the time.
And a bunch of other factors that you don't even know about. So, yeah, that would be my main two.
I saw something recently was basically saying, I don't want to be liked by everyone because I don't like everyone. So if I didn't like them, why would I want them to like me? But it is really hard to like move away from that and actually be like, you know what, it doesn't matter because I just need to, there's a certain number of people in my life who it is important what they think about me, but I guess everyone else doesn't really matter.
Yeah, like I think it's like it's like a Japanese way of thinking. I read about it years ago and it's always stuck with me is you are like the center of your universe and then like your immediate family and loved ones are like your first circle and then your friends are your second and then you should really just focus on your inner circle.
Yeah.
And you can try and make sure that you're caring about those people on your third or fourth circle, but at the end of the day, there's other things that matter more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a crippling people pleaser, so I
Who are you?
really? Like, I understand that it's a concept. But I'm like, you have to like me. This tell me I'm good.
Ellen, I really liked your point about patience too, because I think the key to resilience perhaps is just not giving up, right?
Yeah.
And so just knowing that things will work out with time and consistency. And it's not like you're just there doing nothing. It's that you're showing up and you're putting effort in and then eventually it will work.
Yeah. And I used to get so frustrated when people would tell me that. I'd
Yeah.
be like, shut up. You don't know anything. You're just saying that because you feel sad for me. Like, I just would never believe people when they would say, like, just trust the process. They're like, enjoy the learning experience. Oh, I hated that one.
It
I
does,
hate
yeah,
that.
the learning experience one really
I hate it.
great.
But yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
we're getting older now and we kind of get it.
Yeah. Oh, it turns out they were right. Damn it.
So, what's your favorite part about your career at the moment? Like, What do you get out of bed in the morning? You're like, "Oh, I can't wait to do this thing."
I would say the connection piece, I feel like is really important to me. Like I'm a self-confessed extroverted introvert. My social battery runs out really, really quickly, but
Mm.
I do get charged up by really like tangible, valuable conversations. Like stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love because we're like talking about real stuff. Like that
Mm.
gets me excited. And talking to people who are also really passionate about the things that I'm passionate about.
Love it.
Yeah, it's that charges me up. If I used to work in retail and the same conversation day in, day out,
Mm.
multiple times a day,
How's
it
the
was
weather?
yeah, it would just drain my battery
Yeah.
so quickly. Where one thing that I like about my job now is I get to talk about, people in design and what they're working on and the products that they're working on and what they're doing to impact users and like just everything around that. I'm just find really interesting. So
Soaking up other people's passion.
yes,
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah,
Amazing.
We are almost halfway through the year as well. And this is what you love on a day to day basis. But is there anything really big coming up for the second half of the year that's like, yes, as a feeling? That's a word, but could also be a feeling.
honestly, not really.
I'm throwing her off.
Sorry, you might have to cut this question. No,
I just ask a question. Arden looks at me like, what the shit? God damn
I
it.
think it's me being like, I love the vibes.
Yeah.
I don't put
No.
out those vibes, but I wish I did.
There's honestly like not one big event or catalyst or anything that I'm just really enjoying getting to be more community minded. Like I feel like the best thing about Newcastle is the community and like this everyone knows or knows a friend of someone.
Mm.
So just getting more in touch with that again is really, really fun. But yeah, not really. I just want to be more consistent.
I like to think of Newcastle as a mushroom. Fun fact about mushrooms, if the listeners don't know.
ADHD brain
Is
Sarah.
that, the little bits that you see up at the top, they're just the like reproductive bits, more or less. There's a fibrous network under the soil, and those little mushrooms that you see everywhere could be all part of the same effective organism. And Newcastle's kind of like that, You see, there's one person over here, there's another person over there. They seem totally uncorrected. Wrong. They're the same mushroom fibrous network underneath.
Well, you know what I learned today?
Is it about mushrooms?
Yeah, well, it's about connections in Newcastle.
Good.
The CFO at MGA Thermal, her son had music lessons from the same music teacher that I first learned violin from when I was really little.
No, how do you even
That is wild.
figure that out?
Classic Newcastle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those really random things. And then she mentions a name. I'm like, that person?
Really enough.
Yeah.
See, the mushroom analogy carries.
It does. You should pepper the podcast with here's a quick break for mushroom facts.
Yeah, like don't quote me on this, but they did a study of like they took some
another one.
genetic samples of a mushroom and then another mushroom that was like over a couple of kilometers away, and it was the same fibrous network of mushroom. Yeah, it's crazy. Everyone do some mushroom research when you get home.
I'll just do some mushrooms.
I
And we
still
can
love
all
it.
be connected.
Why do you love Newcastle? Assuming you love Newcastle because you're back here, right?
How do you feel about mushrooms?
The Newcastle mushroom. I feel like I have a similar story to all of us that grew up in Newcastle. I wanted to leave as soon as I could. I grew up when it had a really crummy reputation and it was like the only thing to do was to go to Charlestown Square on a Thursday night. Like just like
We
really,
still love it.
I still love it. But just it was like it had that small town vibe. And so when I left, I loved being part of a big city. But the more time that went on, the more I realized that I actually missed the community aspect of what Newcastle has to offer. I missed being able to, well, actually, I didn't really, but like kind of being able to go down to Woolworths and see someone that you knew. I used to hate that going as a kid because my parents knew
You
everyone.
just stop and chat.
Yes. But now I'm like, oh, I wonder who I'm going to see down
It's
at
when you
the
go to your
shops.
parents' local Woolworths and then you bump into like all your old school teachers and you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah, I know. But like it's those things that used to make me cringe as a kid. I'm like, oh, I actually kind of miss that. Like it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
So
Sarah's still not there.
that's probably your idea of a nightmare.
Maybe a couple more years and I'll be there.
Yeah.
No, but it's something where like if you've ever lived in a bigger city, having that anonymity is really exciting initially, but then it can be quite lonely and isolating. So coming back to this vibe where you can just walk down the street and see someone and have a chat, that's really nice. And I just miss the beach. Really, like
we finally got one guest
one
on the
person
podcast
who likes the beach.
beach.
yeah.
It's the first time for everything.
Do you like the sand?
No, actually, I don't
Oh,
like
Ah,
the
there we go.
sand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
So
don't
we
like
should
sand.
specify you like the ocean?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
Me too.
Yeah,
But
big
not-
water baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tactile.
I don't like the
sand.
ocean either because it's too salty. Which I guess,
can't really get around that, can you?
yeah, and then it dries in your eyebrows, and I'm just not interested in that.
Yes, I get that.
Valuable
Mhm.
podcast.
God. Well, it was actually kind of funny that like when I was away, I would show people photos of the beach and go up to Shoal Bay quite a lot. And I would show people photos of Shoal Bay, and they were like, "You lived there? Like you lived there?" I'm like, "Yeah."
But it's sunny like the majority of the time.
Yeah. And I'm like, seeing other people's reactions who weren't used to this is like, why did you come here? Why did you come to London where it was like bucketing down rain and sleet and it has like 5 hours of sunlight in the winter?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, right now you're making me question that too.
I do love in the UK like the scarcity mindset when it comes to the sun. Like if it's a sunny day, everyone's like, we have to get outside, we have to have a picnic, like start sunbaking, and like it's just another day in Australia.
Yeah.
So
we just take it for granted.
yeah.
I actively avoid the sun. So
Yeah.
maybe I should move to the UK. I don't know.
What advice would you give your younger self? So maybe like before you moved away.
I also like to ask this question.
Yeah.
But I've never thought of asking myself. I would just say to myself, just give everything or every new venture or every opportunity, give it a bit of breathing room. Don't feel like you have to jump into everything straight away. I'm very typical Sagittarian. I like to jump into everything quite quickly. And without really thinking of it, I go with my gut maybe a little bit too much, where I need to like let my brain process things a little bit more before I make decisions. So I would say just mull things over, and it's okay to say no to things. I feel like there's so much pressure for young people especially to be like, say yes to everything and take everything by the horns and do all the things. But I would just burn myself out.
Yeah.
Because I would try and cram so much into my day-to-day life that I'd be like, oh, I'll regret saying no. And now I'm like, does it actually serve what you're trying to do? Or what are your goals? And figure that out first and then backtrack and actually use your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. The not burning yourself out and not having meltdowns when you overcommit is a good one.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
Especially when you're like, if you are away from your support network as well, you don't have anyone to keep you in check.
Yeah.
And you don't have anyone day to day to offer you advice. Like it's not as if you come home to mum and be like, oh yeah, like, I have the opportunity to go to this city for a week or two to do this project or something. And you don't really have anyone to be like, oh, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Or heck yes, do it. You're kind of like, ooh, should I not? Sure. Like, and sometimes that can be a bit detrimental. So yeah.
So what advice would you give then if there were anyone listening who's thinking, wow, a design recruiter sounds amazing. I really want to do that.
You can't have a job in Newcastle. The one spot is filled.
This is my turf. No, I'm kidding. No, I think more the merrier, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the more people that are talking about design and the good stuff that's happening in the industry, I think is, more the merrier. I'd say it's not as it's definitely a lot more tech focused here in Australia, which has its pros and cons, which is great. I've definitely learnt a lot more about the tech side of things when I was in the UK. It definitely leaned more onto like the art side of things, but I'm really enjoying the learning process as well. So if someone's that way minded, then heck yeah, come on board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of tech stuff should, say, if I'm like, I want to get into design and I don't know anything about design, what
Mhm.
kinds of things should I be looking at? Is it particular languages? Is it like a particular software?
Not really languages. I would say
English?
more software. Ideally, if you're in Australia, English. Ideally, I would say
Just
just
speak no
go.
languages. Sorry.
Just talk through your designs.
My art speaks for me.
Yes,
Just interpretive dance.
Yeah. I think first stop should be YouTube.
Yeah.
And just like look at what is around. Look at there's so many content creators out there that are doing some really cool stuff like free tutorials, and just showcasing like their portfolios and doing what they do. Find something that really speaks to you and what you want to create, and then go down the rabbit hole and prepare to be overwhelmed because there is so much stuff out there. Um, there's so many education like you can go to uni, obviously. That's a pretty big undertaking, both financially and time wise.
Mm.
3 to 4 years. I don't know what
Many
it
many
costs
thousands of
now.
Oh, it continues to go up.
Yes.
registered heaps.
Yes. But in saying that, if you are whose learning style is to like listen and see and soak up knowledge that way, I feel like uni would be a really, really great way to go about it because it's a lot more theoretical. It's a lot more, you get to hear about design history, which I loved when I was at uni. However, practical skills, if you just want to get in there and get cracking straight away, there's so many boot camps that you can do now too, like General Assembly and Academy XI, and they offer part-time as well. They also help you with portfolios and like how to talk to hiring managers and go through interviews, or honestly, just get started and look on YouTube. There's so many free things too. So it's as long as you've got the drive to like get the first initial couple of months in off your own bat, I feel like you could get the ball rolling pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you can start with smaller projects as well.
Definitely.
I know that I'm certainly working against an all or nothing mentality. Like if I can't do all of the thing right now, I'm not doing any of the thing. But there is a lot of power in just doing smaller projects or little bits as it comes to you and then making your way downtown.
Yeah, with the portfolio swinging in hand.
Yeah.
Like,
I was going to say it follows what Sarah said in your episode, Sarah. If you haven't listened, you should listen to Sarah's episode.
Good memory.
Which was really just like find a thread of interest and follow that thread. So yeah, if you find something that you're interested in, and if you're interested, like just find a little project or a little thing that you can start on and just follow that through.
Yeah, there's plenty of really amazing careers that have started from, I really love making menus. So a designer that I know, she like first started her career in just like she went to all the different like little mum and pop cafes in her like little town and asked like, oh, I noticed that, your menu hasn't changed in 5 years. Can I do it up for free?
That's so cute.
That's
And
awesome.
then
Yeah.
she was able to put that on her portfolio and that then progressed into websites and you can just, you've just got to start pulling the thread.
Yeah.
I love there's a guy online who goes around, I think it's New York, and like upgrades signs. And the last one I saw was like, pick up your dog poop. And he like does all this like illustration and like
the posters saying, I've seen that.
It's easy to spread joy that way, right? Like you are doing service to your community. Like
absolutely.
So cute. I love
Or Photoshop your friends as bees. That's been my number one use case for Photoshop. Technically count, like you're developing your Photoshop skills.
Wait, Photoshop your friends as bees.
As bees, honeybees.
Okay.
Photoshop their
Why
face.
aren't I a honeybee?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't just drop that into conversation without like giving us some proof about this.
I will offer no
Are we not your
No.
friends?
I
want to be a bee.
admittedly went through a phase like a couple of years ago where I did a lot of really questionable photoshops. Mostly it's like peas in a pod or bees or whatever else.
Well, like there's Photoshop AI now. So
Just type it
I'll
in.
get a photo of you and a photo of a bee and AI it together.
Yeah.
I'm looking
That'll
forward
be
to this.
terrifying.
Anyways, the point is, sometimes you can learn and it's not for the greater good. Arguably, it's the opposite of that.
But that's okay. You're still learning.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's the end of the episode. So bye.
It was so amazing to chat to you today, Ellen. And if you listening enjoyed this episode, please leave us a good review and recommend it to your friends, share it online, all of those lovely things to support us.
If you know any mushroom facts, drop them in the comments.
Absolutely.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. It really shows that
Instagram.
you've listened to the episode.
Yeah.
If you drop us a mushroom fact.
LinkedIn message me a mushroom fact. I'm here for it. I'll probably already know it, but I'll pretend to be surprised.
So the description will have links to our meetup group, LinkedIn page and Instagram. Give us a follow to support our community and stay up to date. And as is now custom, I'm leaving the final words of wisdom to you, Sarah.
Oh, great. I love that we do this. Bye.
Just gonna have a quick drink.
That is A-okay.
Drink break. Thanks, Will.
Sorry, Will. You're going to listen to 3 ladies lunching on water.
Sorry.